Nothing says marital bliss like finding your wife's burner phone while doing laundry at 3 in the morning. I'm Marshall Dyer, 43 years old, financial analyst by day, insomniac by night, and apparently husband to a woman who thinks discretion means buying a second phone instead of just filing for divorce like a normal person. The phone buzzed in my hand. A text from C that made my coffee taste like battery acid. Can't wait to feel you again tonight. Dana, you drive me crazy. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I sat in our kitchen in Millbrook Harbor, Maine, one of those faded New England coastal towns where everyone knows everyone's business except, apparently, the husband. The morning fog rolled off the harbor like cigarette smoke, and I could hear old Mrs. Patterson next door already firing up her gossip engine disguised as a leaf blower. Dana walked into the kitchen wearing her power suit, the one that cost more than my monthly car payment. She looked like success wrapped in designer fabric, which made sense since her boutique was doing better than my career ever had. "Morning, honey," she said, not looking up from her phone, her real phone. "Morning, sweetheart," I replied, sliding the burner across the counter. "You forgot something." The color drained from her face faster than water from a broken dam. For a second, just a second, I saw the woman I married 15 years ago, vulnerable, caught, human. Then the mask slammed back down. "Marshall, I can explain." "Can you?" Because C seems pretty excited about tonight's activities, and I'm pretty sure we don't have anything planned. She grabbed the phone, clutching it like a life preserver. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because I think my wife is screwing someone whose name starts with C, and given that our contractor Colby Crane has been spending an awful lot of time fixing things around here lately, I'm thinking it's exactly what I think." Dana's jaw tightened. "You went through my private things." "Your private things were mixed in with our laundry. Unless you're planning to wash that phone, which might actually be a good idea considering where it's been." She stood there, designer heels clicking against our kitchen tile, looking like she was calculating the cost of this conversation. That's when I knew for sure. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a business decision. "I want you to leave," she said. "I want a lot of things, Dana. I want a wife who doesn't need a backup phone. I want to not feel like a stranger in my own house. I want to not have spent the last 6 months wondering why you suddenly developed an interest in home improvement projects that required so much consultation. Just go, Marshall, please." I poured my coffee into the sink and watched it swirl down the drain. You know what's funny? I actually liked Colby. Thought he was a decent guy. Shows what I know about reading people. "It's not about you." Bullshit. The word came out harder than I intended. "It's entirely about me. It's about you deciding I wasn't enough and shopping around instead of having the guts to say so." I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. "I'll be at the Anchor Inn if you want to pretend you care where I am, but something tells me you've got other plans." The Anchor Inn was exactly what you'd expect from a motel that charged by the week. Clean enough to not catch anything, cheap enough to not care about your problems. I checked in with Eddie Kowalski, the owner, who'd been running the place since the Carter administration. "Rough night, Marshall?" "Rough 15 years, Eddie. Just catching up on it all at once." My room smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat on the bed and stared at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a map of somewhere I'd never been. The walls were thin enough that I could hear the couple next door arguing about money, which seemed appropriate. I called my boss, Jim Hendricks, and told him I'd be working from the motel for a few days. Personal issues. He didn't ask questions. In our line of work, personal disasters were as common as quarterly reports. Then I called the one person in town who might understand what I was going through, Frankie, who ran the old boxing gym down by the harbor. Frankie had been married 4 times and divorced 5 times, which was mathematically impossible but emotionally accurate. "Marshall, Jesus, what time is it?" Time for me to learn how to hit something that hits back. "Dana?" "Dana and Colby Crane." A long pause. "Ah, shit. That sucks, kid. Gym opens at 6. Coffee's terrible, but it's strong." I spent the rest of the morning driving around town, seeing it through different eyes. Millbrook Harbor had about 8,000 people, which meant my personal business would be public knowledge by lunchtime. I could already see the curtains twitching as I drove past the neat little houses with their neat little lives. At noon, I drove past Dana's boutique, Refined Threads. Through the window, I could see her talking to her business partner, Jessica Walsh. Both women looked serious, probably discussing damage control. Jessica had never liked me, thought Dana had married down when she picked a number cruncher over whatever white-collar prince she'd had in mind. My phone buzzed. A text from Dana. "We need to talk. Meet me at home at 7. I texted back, "Your house, your rules. I'll be there." But first, I had a stop to make. Lydia Crane answered her door looking like she'd been expecting bad news. She was 39, sharp-featured, with the kind of intelligence that made you watch your words. Her house was immaculate, the kind of clean that suggested either obsessive-compulsive tendencies or a need to control something in a life that felt chaotic. "Marshall, I was wondering when you'd show up." "You knew?" "Honey, I've known for 3 months. I was just waiting to see if you'd figure it out or if I'd have to draw you a map." She stepped aside to let me in. "Coffee? Please?" Her kitchen was the opposite of mine. Everything had a place, and everything was in its place. She poured 2 cups of coffee that actually smelled good, not like the motor oil I'd been drinking at the motel. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Since February. Colby started working late, taking calls in the garage, buying new clothes. Then I found the credit card statements. Dinner at Romano's. That's not exactly a place you take clients to discuss drywall." "Why didn't you say anything?" Lydia sat across from me at her kitchen table. "Because I was hoping it would burn out on its own. Colby's had flings before, usually last about 6 weeks, then he comes crawling back with flowers and promises. But this one's different." "Different how?" "He's talking about leaving, says he's found someone who appreciates him." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. 20 years of marriage, 3 kids, and he's found someone who appreciates him. "I'm sorry, Lydia." "Don't be sorry. Be smart." She pulled out a manila folder from a kitchen drawer. GPS tracker on his truck, credit card statements, phone records. I've been documenting everything. I opened the folder. 3 months of evidence, meticulously organized. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even photos of Colby's truck parked at various locations around town. Jesus, Lydia, you could work for the FBI. I worked for a private investigator before I married Colby. Old habits. She sipped her coffee. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I don't know. Part of me wants to just walk away, let them have each other. And the other part? I thought about Dana's face that morning, the cold calculation in her eyes when she told me to leave. The other part wants them to understand that actions have consequences. Good, because I have a plan. Lydia's plan was elegant in its simplicity. We wouldn't break any laws, wouldn't do anything that could come back to bite us legally. But we would make sure that Colby and Dana's affair became the worst-kept secret in Millbrook Harbor, and we'd document everything they'd done wrong in the process. Small towns run on gossip, Lydia explained. Right now, they think they're being clever, sneaking around. But if we shine a light on this thing, make it public, they'll either have to own it or end it. Either way, we win. What about your kids? They're in college. They'll survive. Might even respect me more for not being a doormat. She closed the folder. Besides, Colby made this choice. I'm just making sure he lives with the consequences. I left Lydia's house feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not hope that Dana and I could work things out. That ship had sailed. But hope that I wasn't going to be the only casualty in this mess. At 7 o'clock, I pulled into the driveway of the house Dana and I had bought together 8 years ago. It was a nice house, nothing fancy but solid. Good bones, the realtor had said. Apparently good bones weren't enough. Dana was waiting in the living room, still in her work clothes but with her shoes off. A small humanizing detail that almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Wouldn't miss it. This should be educational." She flinched. "Marshall, please. Can we just talk like adults?" "Sure, you first. Explain to me like I'm an adult how you ended up screwing our contractor." "It wasn't planned. It just happened." "Bullshit. Affairs don't just happen. They're a series of choices. You chose to flirt with him. You chose to give him your number. You chose to meet him somewhere. You chose to take your clothes off. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was some cosmic accident." Dana sat down heavily on our couch. The one we'd picked out together, argued about the color, compromised on the fabric. Now it just looked like furniture. "You're right," she said quietly. "It was choices, and I made them because I was lonely." "Lonely? I live here, Dana. I sleep next to you every night. How the hell were you lonely?" "You sleep next to me, but you're not with me. When's the last time we talked about anything that mattered? When's the last time you looked at me like I was more than just another piece of furniture?" I wanted to argue, but the words stuck in my throat. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. We had drifted. We had become roommates who shared a mortgage and a last name. "So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to talk to Colby?" He listened to me. He made me feel interesting again. And the fact that he's married didn't matter. Of course it mattered. But Marshall, we're not happy. You know we're not happy. We haven't been happy for years. I sat down in the chair across from her, the one I'd been sitting in every night for 8 years, watching TV shows I didn't care about, making small talk about days that all blended together. So what now? I asked. I think we should separate, officially. Give each other space to figure out what we want. What you want, you mean? You've already figured out what you want. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Dana. Fair would have been you talking to me before you started shopping for my replacement. She was crying now, which should have made me feel something. Sympathy, regret, anything. Instead, I just felt tired. I'll get my stuff tomorrow, I said, standing up. Have your lawyer call mine. Marshall, wait! But I was already walking toward the door. I'd heard enough. Frankie's gym occupied the bottom floor of an old brick building that had been everything from a textile mill to a furniture warehouse to a failed restaurant. Now it was home to a dozen punching bags, some free weights that looked like they'd been forged during the Coolidge administration, and a boxing ring that had seen more action than a war correspondent. I showed up at 6 a.m. sharp, still wearing yesterday's clothes and carrying a duffel bag with everything I owned that mattered, which wasn't much. You look like hell, Frankie said by way of greeting. He was 65, built like a fire hydrant, with hands that looked like they'd been carved from granite. Good. Means you're taking this seriously. I need to hit something, Frankie. Yeah, I figured. But first, you need to learn how to hit something without breaking your hand. Coffee? The coffee was, as advertised, terrible but strong. We sat on folding chairs next to the ring while Frankie explained the basics. How to wrap your hands, how to stand, how to throw a punch without telegraphing it to next week. Boxing's not about anger, he said. Anger makes you sloppy. Boxing's about control. You control your body, you control your opponent, you control the situation. I don't feel very in control right now. That's because you're not. Your wife's calling the shots, making the moves, and you're just reacting. Time to change that. We spent the next hour working on fundamentals. Footwork, breathing, basic combinations. My hands were soft from years of pushing papers, and the bag felt like hitting a brick wall wrapped in leather. But there was something satisfying about the impact, the solid thunk of glove against bag. Better, Frankie said after I'd worked through a basic 1-2 combination. You're not trying to eliminate the bag anymore. You're trying to hurt it efficiently. What's the difference? Trying to eliminate it is emotional. Trying to hurt it is tactical. Other guys started filtering in around 7:30. Working guys mostly, construction workers, mechanics, a couple of cops. They nodded at me but didn't ask questions. Frankie's gym had an unspoken rule. Whatever brought you here was your business. Around 8, my phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Saw Colby's truck in your driveway this morning. Everything okay? I showed the text to Frankie. He grinned. And so it begins, he said. Small-town gossip is better than CNN for spreading news. Should I be worried? Depends. You planning to run for mayor? No. Then let them talk. Gossip's a weapon, Marshall. Question is whether you're going to let other people aim it, or if you're going to pick your own targets. I thought about that while I showered in the gym's locker room, which had all the charm of a prison facility but at least had hot water. Gossip as a weapon. In a town like Millbrook Harbor, reputation mattered. People did business with people they trusted, socialized with people they respected. Dana and Colby thought they were being discreet, but discretion was a luxury that disappeared the moment Mrs. Patterson started paying attention. My phone rang. Jim Hendricks, my boss. Marshall, we need to talk. Can you come in? On my way. The drive to the office gave me time to think. Jim was a decent guy, but he was also a businessman. If my personal drama was affecting my work or the company's reputation, he'd have to make a choice, and I wasn't sure which way that choice would go. Hendricks and Associates occupied the second floor of a downtown building that had seen better decades. We did financial analysis for small businesses, estate planning, some light accounting work. Nothing glamorous, but steady. Jim was waiting in his office with a cup of coffee and a concerned expression. Sit down, Marshall. How are you holding up? I've been better, but I'm functional. Good, because I need you functional. We've got the Morrison audit next week and the Westfield estate planning meeting on Thursday. I'll be ready. Jim leaned back in his chair. I also heard from Jessica Walsh this morning. My stomach dropped. Jessica was Dana's business partner and one of our clients. What did she want? She wanted to know if your personal situation was going to affect our professional relationship. I told her that your personal life was none of my business, but that you are one of my best analysts and I expected our working relationship to continue unchanged. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. She also mentioned that she might be looking for new representation, said she was concerned about potential conflicts of interest. I felt the walls closing in, bad enough that Dana was blowing up our marriage. Now she was coming after my livelihood too. Jim, I'll understand if you need to. Need to what? Fire my best analyst because his wife's having an affair? Marshall, I've been married to the same woman for 32 years, and if she decided to run off with the mailman tomorrow, I'd still expect you to show up and do your job. Your personal life is your personal life. Even if it costs us clients? Even if it costs us clients. Besides, Jessica Walsh represents about 2% of our revenue. You represent about 30% of our productivity. Math's pretty simple. I left Jim's office feeling better than I had in days. At least someone was on my side. But that feeling didn't last long. Tommy Brennan and I had been friends since high school. We'd played baseball together, double-dated, been each other's best man. When Dana and I bought our house, Tommy helped us move. When Tommy's dad passed away, I helped carry the casket. So when he called and asked me to meet him at Murphy's Tavern, I figured he wanted to offer support, maybe buy me a beer and tell me everything would work out. I was wrong. Murphy's was the kind of bar that hadn't changed since the Kennedy administration. Dark wood, dim lighting, and the lingering smell of cigarettes from back when people could still smoke indoors. Tommy was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with Mike Santos and Dave Chen, two other guys from our old crowd. Marshall, Tommy said, not getting up. Thanks for coming. I slid into the booth, immediately sensing something was off. These guys had been my friends for 25 years, but they were looking at me like I'd grown a second head. What's this about? I asked. Tommy glanced at the other guys, then back at me. We heard about you and Dana. Yeah, well, news travels fast in this town. We also heard about what you did to Colby's truck. I'd keyed Colby's truck 2 days ago, left a note under his windshield that said, "Careful where you park this. Some neighborhoods aren't safe." Apparently word had gotten around. What about it? Come on, Marshall, Mike said. Vandalizing the guy's truck? That's not like you. A lot of things aren't like me lately. Amazing what finding out your wife is cheating will do to your personality. Dave leaned forward. Look, we get it. You're pissed. You have every right to be pissed. But going after Colby isn't the answer. Really? What is the answer? Should I send him a thank you card? You should handle this like an adult, Tommy said. Get a lawyer, file for divorce, move on with your life. Don't turn this into some kind of revenge fantasy. I stared at my oldest friend, trying to figure out when he'd become a stranger. Revenge fantasy? The guy's sleeping with my wife, Tommy. In my house, on my dime. And you want me to handle it like a gentleman? I want you to handle it like the Marshall Dyer I've known for 25 years. The guy who thinks things through, who doesn't let his emotions make his decisions for him. Maybe that Marshall Dyer was a sucker. Maybe, Mike said, but at least he wasn't turning into someone we don't recognize. The words hit like a physical blow. I looked around the table at 3 guys I'd considered brothers and saw disappointment in their eyes. Disappointment in me. So that's it? You're taking their side? There are no sides, Marshall, Dave said. There's just right and wrong. And vandalizing someone's property is wrong, no matter what they did to you. What about sleeping with someone's wife? Where does that fall on your moral compass? That's between Colby and Lydia, Tommy said, and between Dana and you. It's not our business. But my reaction to it is your business? When you start acting like a crazy person, yeah, it becomes our business. We care about you, Marshall. We don't want to see you do something stupid that you'll regret. I stood up from the booth. You know what I regret? I regret thinking my friends would have my back when my life fell apart. We do have your back, Tommy said. That's why we're here. No, you're here because you're embarrassed by me. You're worried that being associated with the guy whose wife left him for the contractor might reflect poorly on you. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and it came out bitter. You want to talk about fair? Fair would be Dana asking for a divorce before she started shopping for my replacement. Fair would be Colby declining the job when he realized he wanted to sleep with the client. Fair would be my best friend saying, "Hey, Marshall, we heard what happened, and it sucks, and we're here for you." I threw a 20 on the table. But apparently fair isn't on the menu tonight. I walked out of Murphy's feeling more alone than I had since this whole mess started. Losing Dana hurt, but losing my friends, that felt like losing pieces of myself. My phone buzzed as I got to my car. A text from Lydia. Coffee tomorrow morning? I have news. I texted back, I'll be there. At least someone was still on my side. Lydia's news was that Colby and Dana were getting sloppy. They'd been seen together at Romano's, the nicest restaurant in town, sitting at a corner table, holding hands like teenagers. 3 different people had called Lydia to make sure she knew. The thing about affairs, Lydia said, pouring coffee in her spotless kitchen, is that they start out secret and exciting, but eventually the people having them want to go public. They want to be seen together, want to act like a real couple. So they're basically doing our job for us. Exactly. But I think we can help the process along. She slid a piece of paper across the table. Colby's taking Dana to the Lakeside Inn this weekend. Romantic getaway. He told me he was going to Portland on business. The Lakeside Inn was about an hour north of Millbrook Harbor, a place where people went when they wanted privacy and didn't mind paying for it. It was also the kind of place where a certain type of person might go to celebrate making a clean break from their old life. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking it's time for a confrontation, but not the kind they're expecting." Lydia's plan was beautiful in its simplicity. We wouldn't storm into their room, wouldn't make a scene, wouldn't do anything that could get us arrested. Instead, we'd make sure their romantic weekend became very, very public. "Social media," she explained. "Everyone's got a camera phone now. All we need is to be in the right place at the right time with the right documentation." That sounds dangerously close to stalking. It's not stalking if we're in a public place, and it's not harassment if we're just documenting what they're doing voluntarily. I thought about my conversation with Tommy and the guys. They'd accused me of turning into someone they didn't recognize. Maybe they were right. The old Marshall Dyer would have handled this quietly, privately, with dignity. But the old Marshall Dyer had been married to a woman who respected him enough not to cheat. The old Marshall Dyer had friends who supported him when his life fell apart. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Saturday morning, Lydia and I drove north in her car, following Colby's truck at a discreet distance. He'd left his house at 10 a.m., telling Lydia he'd be back Sunday night. Dana had told her business partner she was going to a trade show in Boston. The Lakeside Inn lived up to its name, a sprawling complex of cabins and main buildings situated on the shore of Lake Winnebago. It was the kind of place that advertised romantic getaways and private retreats, which made it perfect for our purposes. We watched from the parking lot as Colby checked in, then waited in his truck. 20 minutes later, Dana arrived in her BMW. Even from a distance, I could see the excitement in her body language as she practically skipped to his truck. "You okay?" Lydia asked. I was watching my wife of 15 years embrace another woman's husband in broad daylight, looking happier than she'd looked with me in years. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I'm functional. That's close enough." They disappeared into Cabin 7, a secluded unit with a view of the lake and enough privacy for whatever they had planned. Lydia and I checked into the main lodge, requesting a room with a view of the lake. We weren't hiding. If anyone asked, we were a divorced couple trying to work things out. "Now what?" I asked as we settled into our room. "Now we wait. They'll come out eventually, for dinner, for a walk, for drinks, and when they do, we'll be ready." Lydia had brought a camera with a telephoto lens, the kind serious photographers used for wildlife shots. She also had her phone, a tablet, and a portable Wi-Fi hotspot. She was prepared for war. At 6 p.m., they emerged from their cabin, dressed for dinner. Dana was wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, something that probably cost more than most people spent on a car payment. Colby was in slacks and a button-down shirt, looking like a man who thought he'd won the lottery. They walked hand in hand to the inn's restaurant, a glass-walled dining room that offered panoramic views of the lake. Lydia and I followed at a distance, taking a table on the opposite side of the restaurant. "Perfect," Lydia murmured, adjusting her camera. "They're sitting right by the window, full view of the lake. Couldn't have asked for better lighting." She started taking pictures, discreet shots through the restaurant's windows, capturing Dana and Colby in intimate conversation, holding hands across the table, feeding each other dessert like honeymooners. "This feels wrong," I said. "What feels wrong is them thinking they can destroy 2 marriages and just walk away," Lydia replied, not looking up from her camera. "What feels wrong is your friends taking their side instead of yours." She was right. I thought about Tommy and the guys, about their disappointment in my behavior. They wanted me to handle this with dignity, to take the high road, but the high road was looking pretty lonely from where I sat. After dinner, Dana and Colby took a walk along the lake shore. Lydia and I followed, staying far enough back to avoid detection, but close enough for her camera to capture them silhouetted against the sunset, looking like a couple in a romantic movie. "Got it," Lydia said, reviewing the photos on her camera's display. "These are perfect." "What are you going to do with them?" "Nothing yet. But when the time comes, these will show that they weren't just having a moment of weakness. They were having a relationship, planning a future together while lying to everyone else." We followed them back to their cabin, watched the lights go on, watched the curtains close. Then we went back to our room to plan the next phase. Tomorrow morning, Lydia said, they'll probably have breakfast at the restaurant, maybe take another walk. That's when we make our move. What kind of move? The kind that makes sure everyone back home knows exactly what they were doing up here. I lay awake most of that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to the lake water lapping against the shore. In the next room, my wife was sleeping with another woman's husband, probably planning how they were going to break the news to their respective spouses. They thought they held all the cards. They thought they were in control of the narrative. Tomorrow, they'd learn otherwise. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold, with a kind of light that made everything look sharp and unforgiving. Dana and Colby emerged from their cabin at 9 a.m., looking relaxed and happy. They walked to the restaurant holding hands, stopping occasionally to kiss like teenagers. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Lydia observed, watching through binoculars from our window. Why should they? As far as they know, nobody's watching. That's about to change. Lydia had spent the early morning hours uploading photos to various social media accounts, tagging them with the inn's location and adding captions like, "Some people have interesting ideas about business trips, and guess who's not in Boston after all." But that was just the opening act. The main event was about to begin. We waited until Dana and Colby were seated and had ordered their breakfast. Then Lydia and I walked into the restaurant, chose a table with a clear view of theirs, and sat down. It took Dana about 30 seconds to notice me. I watched her face go through a series of emotions: surprise, fear, anger, and finally calculation. She leaned across the table and whispered something to Colby, who turned to look at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Marshall," Dana said, walking over to our table, "what are you doing here?" "Having breakfast with a friend," I replied. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" "You followed us." Actually, Lydia and I were already here, trying to work through some personal issues of our own. Imagine our surprise when we saw you and Colby having what looked like a very romantic dinner last night. Colby had joined us by now, standing behind Dana like a bodyguard. "This is harassment, Marshall." "Is it? I'm sitting in a public restaurant eating breakfast. If that's harassment, then you and Dana have been harassing me for months." "That's different," Dana said. "How is it different?" "We're not following you around, taking pictures." "Taking pictures?" I looked at Lydia with mock surprise. "Were we taking pictures?" "Just a few," Lydia said, holding up her camera. "The lighting was so beautiful last night. You two looked like something out of a magazine." "Delete those," Colby demanded. "I don't think so," Lydia replied. "See, Marshall and I have been having an interesting conversation about honesty in relationships, about how people should be upfront about their intentions instead of sneaking around lying to everyone." "What do you want?" Dana asked. "I want you to stop pretending this is about anything other than what it is," I said. "You want out of our marriage? Fine. File for divorce. You want to be with Colby? Great. Be with Colby. But stop lying about it. Stop sneaking around, and stop treating me like I'm too stupid to figure out what's going on." "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple. You made a choice, Dana. Own it." The restaurant had gone quiet around us. Other diners were trying to pretend they weren't listening, but in a place like this, our conversation was the most interesting thing that had happened all weekend. "Let's take this outside," Colby said. "Good idea," Lydia agreed. "More room for everyone to see." We moved to the inn's front porch, a wide veranda that overlooked the lake and provided an excellent view for anyone who might be interested in watching, which, as it turned out, was pretty much everyone. "You want to know what I want?" I said, looking at Dana and Colby. "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You want to blow up 2 marriages? Fine. But you don't get to control how the wreckage falls." "What's that supposed to mean?" Dana asked. "It means that by tomorrow morning, everyone in Millbrook Harbor is going to know exactly what you two were doing up here. They're going to see the pictures, read the posts, hear the stories, and they're going to make their own decisions about what kind of people you are." "You can't do that," Colby said. "Can't do what? Tell the truth? Share photos that you posed for in public? Exercise my right to free speech?" "This is blackmail." "No, blackmail would be me demanding money or favors in exchange for keeping quiet. This is just consequences. You made your choices in public, and now the public gets to know about them." Dana was crying now, but they weren't the tears of someone who was sorry. They were the tears of someone who was angry about getting caught. "Marshall, please, think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it. I've thought about it every night for the past week, lying in a motel room, wondering what I did wrong, wondering if I could have been a better husband, a better man. And you know what I figured out?" "What?" "I figured out that this isn't about me. This is about you deciding you wanted something different and not having the courage to ask for it honestly. So you took it dishonestly, and now you're upset that there are consequences. What do you want from us? Colby asked. I want you to go back to Millbrook Harbor and tell everyone the truth. Tell them you're in love. Tell them you're leaving your spouses. Tell them whatever you want. But stop lying about it. And if we don't? I smiled, and it felt good to smile for the first time in weeks. Then Lydia and I will tell them for you, with pictures. We left them standing on the porch, looking like two people who just realized they weren't as smart as they thought they were. The drive back to Millbrook Harbor was quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Think they'll do it? Lydia asked as we reached the town limits. Doesn't matter, I replied. Either way, everyone's going to know the truth by tomorrow night. Any regrets? I thought about that question as we drove through the streets of the town I'd lived in for 15 years. Past the gym where Frankie had taught me that control was better than anger. Past Murphy's Tavern where my oldest friends had decided I wasn't worth supporting. Past the house Dana and I had shared where someone else's truck was now parked in my driveway. No, I said finally. No regrets. Monday morning brought the kind of small-town drama that people would talk about for years. By 8 a.m., Lydia's photos were circulating on Facebook, Instagram, and every group chat in Millbrook Harbor. By 9 a.m., the story had reached the coffee shops, the post office, and the grocery store. By 10 a.m., Dana's boutique had 3 customers cancel appointments, and Colby's construction company had received 2 calls from clients asking if they needed to find new contractors. I heard all of this from Frankie, who'd become my unofficial intelligence network. Town's buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest, he said as I worked the heavy bag. Half the people are saying you and Lydia went too far, half are saying Dana and Colby got what they deserved. What do you think? I think you controlled the situation instead of letting it control you. That's what I taught you to do. My phone had been ringing all morning. Dana called 6 times before I finally answered. Marshall, we need to talk. No, we don't. We needed to talk 6 months ago before you started sleeping with Colby. Now we need lawyers. Please? Can we meet somewhere? Just for an hour? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at Romano's, the restaurant where she and Colby had been having their romantic dinners. It seemed appropriate. Dana was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept. She'd aged years in the past few days, and for a moment I felt something that might have been sympathy. Thank you for coming, she said. This is the last time, Dana. After today, everything goes through lawyers. I know. She stared at her coffee cup. I want you to know that I never meant for it to happen this way. How did you mean for it to happen? I don't know. I thought maybe we'd grow apart naturally, maybe realize we weren't right for each other anymore. Instead of what? Instead of you actively working to replace me? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. You found someone you liked better, and instead of ending our marriage first, you decided to test drive the new model while keeping the old one as backup. She flinched. That's cruel. But accurate. We sat in silence for a few minutes, 2 people who'd shared 15 years and now had nothing left to say to each other. What happens now? She asked finally. Now you and Colby get to live with the consequences of your choices. You wanted to be together? Congratulations. You're together, but you don't get to control how everyone else reacts to that. People are saying terrible things about us. People are saying true things about you. There's a difference. My business is suffering. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you started using it as a cover for your affair. Dana started crying again, and this time it looked genuine. I never wanted to hurt you, Marshall. But you did hurt me. And you kept hurting me every day, for months. Every lie, every secret meeting, every time you came home and pretended everything was normal. You were hurting me. I'm sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught, sorry there are consequences, sorry your plan didn't work out the way you wanted, but I don't think you're sorry for what you did. I left money on the table for my coffee and stood up. Have your lawyer call mine. We'll divide everything up fair and square, and then we can both move on with our lives. Marshall, wait! But I was already walking away. That afternoon I got a call from Tommy Brennan. Marshall, we need to talk. Do we? Because the last time we talked, you made it pretty clear where you stood. That was before we knew the whole story. The whole story was available if you'd bothered to ask, but you were too busy being disappointed in my reaction to care about what I was reacting to. You're right. We screwed up. Can we buy you a beer and apologize properly? An hour later, I was back at Murphy's Tavern, sitting across from Tommy, Mike, and Dave. The same booth, but everything felt different. We're sorry, Tommy said without preamble. We should have had your back from the beginning. Why didn't you? Because we didn't want to take sides, Mike said. We thought if we stayed neutral, maybe we could help you work things out." There was nothing to work out. Dana made her choice months ago. I was just the last one to find out about it. "We know that now," Dave said, "and we know we let you down when you needed us most." I looked around the table at 3 guys I'd known for half my life. They looked genuinely sorry, genuinely ashamed of how they'd handled things. "Apology accepted," I said, "but things can't go back to the way they were." "Why not?" "Because now I know that when my life falls apart, you guys will worry more about appearances than about helping me pick up the pieces. That's not the kind of friendship I can count on." It was harsh, but it was true. They'd failed me when I needed them most, and that wasn't something I could just forget. "What can we do to make it right?" Tommy asked. "Nothing. Some things can't be fixed, Tommy. They can only be learned from." I left Murphy's Tavern for the second time in a week, but this time I felt better about it. I'd said what needed to be said, and I'd done it without anger or bitterness. Just truth. 3 weeks later, Dana and Colby made it official. They held a press conference, if you could call meeting with the editor of the Millbrook Harbor Gazette a press conference, and announced that they were in love and planned to marry as soon as their divorces were finalized. The story ran on the front page under the headline, "Local Business Owner and Contractor Announce Engagement." It was written in the kind of neutral, just-the-facts style that made their relationship sound like a merger between 2 corporations. The community's reaction was mixed. Some people were supportive, saying that love was love and everyone deserved to be happy. Others were less charitable, pointing out that happiness built on the wreckage of 2 marriages might not be the most stable foundation. Dana's boutique lost about half its customers. Colby's construction business lost about a third of its clients. They were still functional, still profitable, but they'd learned that actions have consequences in small towns. Lydia and I continued our friendship, bonded by shared experience and mutual respect. She filed for divorce and took Colby for everything she could legally claim. I did the same with Dana, though there was less to fight over. "Any regrets?" Lydia asked me one morning over coffee in her immaculate kitchen. "About the divorce? No. About how we handled it? No. About losing 15 years of my life to someone who didn't value them? That's harder to answer." "Those weren't wasted years, Marshall. They were learning years. Now you know what you will and won't accept in a relationship." She was right. I'd learned that I was stronger than I thought, that I could survive having my life turned upside down. I'd learned that some friendships weren't as solid as I'd believed, but that new ones could be built on firmer foundations. Most importantly, I'd learned that being the victim of someone else's bad choices didn't mean I had to remain a victim. I could choose how to respond, how to move forward, how to rebuild. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Dana at the grocery store. She looked good, happy even. Colby was with her, and they were shopping like a normal couple, debating the merits of different pasta sauces. "Marshall," she said, looking genuinely pleased to see me. "How are you?" "I'm good, Dana. Really good." And I was. I'd moved into a small apartment near the harbor, within walking distance of Frankie's gym. I'd started taking photography classes at the community college, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. I was dating a woman named Sarah who taught 3rd grade and laughed at my jokes and didn't have any interest in drama or games. "I'm glad," Dana said. "I want you to be happy." "I am happy. Are you?" She glanced at Colby, who was studying nutrition labels with the intensity of a scholar. Yes, I am." "Good. That's what matters." We chatted for a few more minutes about inconsequential things, the weather, mutual acquaintances, the Red Sox's chances this season. Normal conversation between 2 people who used to be married and now were just neighbors in a small town. As I walked away, I realized that I meant what I'd said. I was glad Dana was happy, not because I still loved her, that feeling had faded somewhere between the burner phone and the lakeside confrontation, but because her happiness meant that all of this had been worth something. She'd gotten what she wanted, a new relationship, a fresh start, a chance to be with someone who made her feel the way she wanted to feel, and I'd gotten what I needed, proof that I could survive anything, that I was stronger than I'd known, that I could build a better life from the ashes of the old one. That evening, I sat on the small deck of my apartment, watching the harbor and thinking about the past year. The boats bobbed in the water like corks, and the sunset painted everything gold and orange. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "Dinner tomorrow? I'm making that pasta dish you liked." I texted back, "Wouldn't miss it." Then I put the phone away and watched the sun disappear behind the horizon. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to choose how I wanted to respond to whatever life threw at me. But tonight, I was content to sit and watch the water and know that I'd survived the worst thing I could imagine and come out stronger on the other side. Some people might call what Lydia and I did revenge. Others might call it justice. I called it taking control of a situation that had been controlling me. Dana and Colby had made their choices, and they'd lived with the consequences. I'd made mine, and I was living with those consequences too. The difference was, I could sleep at night knowing that I'd faced the truth head on, fought back when I needed to fight back, and built something better from the wreckage. In the end, that was enough. More than enough. That was everything.